Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Tai'Shar, a Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Will,
I'm Sam.
and we are here once again. We're wrapping up Winter's Heart today.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Love to say we're slog free, but no, we're almost through this slog book.
Yes, yeah. And really, I think Crossroads of Twilight is my favorite slog book, so.
That's a good description. It's still slog book, but it's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas this and Path of Daggers, it's
Path of Daggers, I think, is the hard. If I had to guess, I would guess that many people, if they abandon the series, do so in Path of Daggers or on a Path of Daggers.
Probably. Yes.
Yeah.
So, Sam, I believe you have us in chapter 29.
Yeah, chapter 29, another plan. I would rate this a skip, probably, just like we alluded to in the last episode, where Will was talking about Matt going places and talking to people. That's what we're doing here. Where old Matt is trying to figure out how to smuggle the Force Sensitive out of the city to avoid the Inquisitors. Oh, sorry. No, that's wrong. I got Order 66 on the mind.
Maybe we'll talk about Kenobi and in an off-topic episode next week or something.
Yeah, for sure. Jolene wants nothing to do with the IDOM, but Matt persuades her there is really not a better way to get past the Shan Chan than to pretend to be Suldam and Damani. Dang it, Google, I do not mean Seattle. Keeps doing that. Satal and Enon tries on the IDOM, but she can't control it, and Jolene falls to the ground in pain. Gonna have to have a different plan. Satal's family has already fled the city, which kind of sucks because Matt was hoping to use their fishing boats as a backup plan if they can't get out using Luca's circus. On his way out, Matt bumps into Bail Doman. Hey, long time no see, Mr. Smuggler. He has a high opinion of old Matt, though, and takes him back to meet Aguinan. Aguinan and Bail catch Matt up to speed on their involvement with Supergirls, because our heroes don't talk to each other directly often enough. We need clear communication, people. Y'all need a workshop or something. Catering sandwiches. Have some speakers. Role play some business cat scenarios. Anyway, the tale confirms to Matt that Aguinan and Bail are on the level and can be trusted. Plus, they need his help as much as he needs theirs. Matt asks Aguinan for 3 Suldam in exchange for getting her and Bail out of the city with him, and she's on board. Matt goes back to the palace to find Tom and Julian. They fill him in on the rest of the details about what happened in Tanchico, in particular about the male IDOM. Yeah, like that particular Chekhov's gun is just going to be tossed into the sea or whatever and never seen again.
Chekhov's male IDOM.
Right, it's catchy. Real catchy. Matt tells Tom and Julian the plan is to escape tomorrow night. Despite his plans, Matt can't sleep thinking about all the ways it might go wrong. On to chapter 30, Cold Fat Raindrops. This one is still a
I played bass for Cold Fat Raindrops. So.
Right on. I guess this could be a skim. I don't know. It's a cold, cloudy day. Man, that'd be nice. It's 98 degrees out there this afternoon, man. My garden is hating it.
It's been like 100 and something like the past few days here.
Yeah,
the humidity. The humidity.
Yes, the humidity. It was a day for murders. Well, okay, maybe not as nice as I was thinking. Lopin brings Matt bread, ham, and some hard yellow cheese. Weird breakfast, but isn't hard cheese great? I mean, I'd be down for just that real hard cheese.
Oh, yeah.
Nice stuff. Miriam and Lopin are supposed to take Ulver out of the city by their refuse gate at the rear of the palace. Well, that's gross. But does sound promising if you don't want to be seen. I can't imagine the refuse gate gets much traffic. No one except the guards until the refuse cart leaves in the afternoon, apparently.
Oh, man. Imagine trying to sell an apartment that was near the refuse gate.
Right. Like what? It's just, it's just a name.
It's centrally located by a well-known
it's got great
landmark.
Access to...
Yes. You can get out of the city.
It's not close to any airports. Try to find. Yeah, that's a good. So no wonder they want to use the refuse gate. They're going to stop by the Wandering Woman and get Matt's gold too. Then head for an abandoned stable on the Great North Road and wait for Matt. Matt says, "If you don't see me by sunrise, go meet up with Talmanis and the band." Lopin and Niram say, "As you command." Matt doesn't believe they would actually leave without him, and even even though they said they will, but the Red Arms would convince them if needed. Matt expected Oliver to be mad about leaving Rizal, but he isn't. She's getting married, Matt, as though explaining the obvious. Rizal is getting married to Banner General Yamada tomorrow. Oliver says, I'm not a child, but you'll play snakes and foxes with me, won't you? You never seem to have the time anymore. Oliver still believes you can win the game. Matt
promises in the cradle and the silver moon. Man in the moon. We'll play snakes and foxes then, son.
I like it.
Yeah.
Matt promises he will just take care of Wind, the horse, until I meet up with y'all. Matt tells Besselin they're escaping tonight, and the other man ain't pleased. Matt asks Besselin to set fire to some Shan-Chan storefronts as a distraction. Well, to have someone else do it. Can't have Besselin associated with terrorist activities, or there could be consequences for Thailand. Besselin says, by midnight I'll be as drunk as an innkeeper's husband. Very drunk, I'm sure. I just assume. Those are some strong women, so I can see.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So Matt tries to convince Vannon and himself that everything will go according to plan. Vannon goes off to get some fish stew. Matt thinks he should eat too, but he's nervous and can't turn his mind off. Sits on a chair in Tylen's apartment, thinks about what should be happening elsewhere. Guinan meeting up with Jolene and bringing along Suldam. Meeting up with Tom and Matt on the way to the Dal Ilira gate. Besselin getting trashed while his buddies commit arson. Finally, it's time. Matt goes to the stables, notices it's started to rain. Jolene has brought her warders, and Satel Anan is there as well, which is not according to plan. Guinan disguises the warders as lantern bearers, and the others will be her entourage. Matt meets his Suldam, Seta, and Rina, and Matt isn't mad about the changes. He's made a few himself. So, on to chapter 31, what the Aelfin said. And you're like, man, are we going to go back to the snakes and the foxes? But no, it's something they already said.
What the Aelfin said was the title track on Cold Fat Raindrops sophomore album.
They opened for Pink Floyd. And Matt goes with Seta and Rena to the Damani kennels. Matt says, I have an errand up there. It'll only take a minute. But Guinan is not amused. So up they go to the attic where most of the lights are out. Matt kind of picks a random door where he is pretty sure one of the sea folk were in and lets himself in and knocks his knees on the bed. Says, I want to ask you a question. What would you do if I took the collar off your neck? She responds, I would free my sisters. We would cross the harbor and free as many as we could. We would take back our ships and fight our way to the sea. If this is a trick, punish me or kill me. I was on the brink of yielding, and I will feel shame for that forever, but you have reminded me of who I am, and I will never yield. Matt says, what if I ask you to wait 3 hours? I remember the Athaan Mier judging the passage of an hour within minutes, one of those memories that isn't his. She says, who are you? Matt Cawthon, he replies, or Cawthon as I wrote it. She says, I'm Nestel Din Sakura Southstar, Matt Cawthon. Okay, hi, JRPG non-playable character, right? This sounds like a character from Suikoden 2. Side note, I always thought it was pronounced Suikoden. That's what I just did it. But no, apparently it's Suikoden. Anyway,
sure.
Suikoden. I didn't know. I've had my...
been corrected Tarvalon or whatever.
Yeah, sure. So Miss Southstar spits in her hand, and Matt does too, and they shake on it. She says, I will wait. You're a good and great man. He says, I'm a gambler, and opens her Idom collar. Then he shows her how to open it. She says she will wait 3 hours. Matt walks out and sees a gray-haired woman in a red panel dress confronting Guinan and Teslin. Guinan says, I have the right to use any wet Damani I wish, Sir Suldam. The other lady says, yeah, but Tessie isn't trained and can't be used. Matt backs away slowly and then runs back to Tylen's chambers. Oopsie, she's there. Matt says, Sugar, son of Jor-El. Didn't think you'd be back yet. Tylen says an army vanished in Mirandy, so we have to come back to figure out what's up with that. Notices that Matt is wearing a plain green coat, and she says the trouble with having a pet fox is sooner or later it remembers it is a fox. Kisses him, then slaps him. Let's have one more night together, he says. Well, I'm kind of leaving tonight. Come with me. Go with you? No, I don't fancy becoming your pretty. I'm the queen of Altara, and I won't abandon my country now. So in the morning, I'll be furious, outraged. I will offer a bounty for you. So Tylen has Matt bind her up and kind of toss her under the bed. Matt says, I'll miss you. Grabs his stuff and leaves. In the hallway, Matt runs into Tuon. Man, you can't catch a break as Tavarian, can you?
No.
You're like being Tom Cruise. Like, yeah, you're Tom Cruise, but you can't go to a Starbucks and just get a Frappuccino. Maybe Gary Oldman could. I could picture that dude just looking totally different every day and be able to walk down the street without ever being recognized.
Tony Hawk can. He just is always told he looks like Tony Hawk.
That's awesome.
Everywhere he goes. You know about this meme, this whole thing where
I don't.
Tony Hawk, he tweets about it every time it happens. People don't come up to him and say like, "Hey, you're Tony Hawk." People come up to him and say, "Hey, you look like Tony Hawk."
That's awesome.
And which I guess is probably because he looks like Tony Hawk looks like a pretty normal guy.
Yeah, sure.
He's not like Tom Cruise looks like a movie star, but
right, just shorter in person, but yeah.
Yeah. But like Tony Hawk always looks like he's missed a night of sleep, and
sure,
just dressed like a normal dude, and But yeah,
that checks out. Yeah, I can see that. So Matt tries to grab Tuon, but she kind of beats the crap out of him. If it hadn't been for Noel wrapping his arms around her, who would have knows what would have happened? Matt stuffs her veil in her mouth, and Noel says, "Do you always have this sort of trouble with women?" "Yes, Noel. Yes, he does. Always," Matt replies sourly. Noel says, "Hey, I'm leaving tonight too. Wise decision." Matt ties Tuon up with a strip of her own dress. She doesn't seem mad anymore or afraid. Jeez, lady. Julian shows up with a lady who is, quote, pretty in a pouty way, but about 5 or 6 years older than Matt expected. Julian gestures at Tuon. "What do we do with her? Leave her in the stables," Matt says. Noel says, "I figured you were kidnapping her." Then Aeginan walks in with a Suldam, Teslin, and an Edicina. Aeginan is her usual confident self until she sees Tuon tied up. "You madman! It's death by slow torture to lay hands on the daughter of the Nine Moons."
Dun, dun, dun.
Buzzwords. Here we come to the chapter title. The Aelfin told Matt that he would marry said daughter. Matt says, "She is my wife." Aeginan says, "You can't say that." Matt says, "Your bloody daughter of the Nine Moons is my wife." Noel laughs. I really would have... If you'd asked me before this chapter, I would have said that the dice stopped rolling in his head at this moment, but no, there's no dice at this point. The dice have already landed at earlier, I think, when he first meets her, maybe, something like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So there's no more dice, but I would have expected dice there. So Lucia scurries in, really, looks at Tuon and says, what you do is foolishness beyond madness. Not looking at Matt, importantly, looking at Tuon. "Omens don't matter." Matt says, "Hey, don't worry, no one's going to get hurt." She looks at him and says, "I will obey you as long as you don't hurt my mistress. Otherwise, I will kill you." Matt thinks, "Yeah, okay, little old maid." Dude, don't you know by now that the Shan-Chan are lousy with trained murderers who look like teddy bears? I mean, you should know. Noel says, "I guess we leave them both in the stables." Matt says, "No. Boy Slim when he liked curvy women. Shan-Chan nobility when he liked common ladies. A woman who wants to buy and kill him. And she would be his wife." Fantastic. "We're taking them with us." So Tuon smiles and Matt shivers.
And now that she said that they're trained killers who look like teddy bears, I'm picturing that last scene at the end of the season 1 with just a ship full of teddy bears.
Yes, that would have been a great moment.
Angry looking little teddy bears like Snuggle from the spokesperson for Bounce, like that kind of
Absolutely.
teddy bear.
I can get behind that. That's everything I would hope for in the television program. On to chapter 32, A Portion of Wisdom.
A Portion of Wisdom was the B-side for my band Cold Fat Raindrops.
Cold Fat Raindrops, indeed. Check in with Rand and company at the Golden Wheel, an inn in Farmatting. This is another... this one's probably a skim. The next one's probably a read. This one's a skimmish. Rand shows a drawing of some men to a server who says he thinks he recognizes one of them at least. Can't be sure, though. He thinks the fella should return soon. But buy a drink or get out of here. So Rand orders a mulled wine, pays the man, and throws in some silver for the info. Overhears a woman tell a tyrant that there's no way the Andorrans will start a civil war. Someone else mentions a plague and is immediately dismissed. Yada yada, more rumors.
Plagues don't happen.
Right, yeah, we've talked about that. Kandori says the Dragon Reborn has been crowned king of Ilion. Lady he's talking to says he's hardly been seen since he took the tower. We'll deal with him. Also, the Stone of Tyr is under siege. Rand grabs a table as the server brings him a steaming pewter cup of spiced wine. Hot cup of pewter. When I think of pewter, I think of like the bendy little Monopoly figures.
Yeah.
but I don't think I've had a pewter cup. I looked it up though. It looks like silver.
Yeah,
like a burnished silver cups.
Yeah, it's kind of a brushed metal looking kind of silvery thing. I think we had some bread dishes that were pewter growing up.
Right on. More rumors until a man in a cloak with a hood up walks in. Nobody Rand knows. Luce therein rages about being cut off from the source, which Rand mutes. Rand thinks he has to endure it to kill the man who tried to kill him. Luce thinks you're afraid. Rand realizes he has all but crushed the poor pewter cup. Another man swaggers in, still not the guy, but with an Ilianer accent. Torval is a Tarabonner. Woman walks up and says, "Oh, you're here after all. It's Varen." Rand says, "Did Cadsuane send you?" Varen says, "No, she would never do that. I thought you would want to hear that Cadsuane is riding out with the girls." "What's the news, Varen?" "Sean Channer and Ilian, not the country, not the city, dang it. New York, this is why it's a bad idea to name your city and country, state, whatever, the same thing."
Right.
It gets confusing. If somebody's from Buffalo, they can't say I'm from New York. You just can't. Everybody's going to think about the Statue of Liberty.
It's even more confusing if you're Kansas City and you're not in Kansas.
That's a good point. That has got to get annoying to everyone who lives there. Rand thinks all the people he murdered didn't matter. Sean Chan are still en route. Would Cadsuane talk to me if I went to her? Varen says, she's real traditional, so you'll have to convince her you're not a fool first. Rand says, I'm leaving Farmatting tomorrow and hope she'll accompany me as my advisor. Varen says, come to Barsala Palace on the Heights this evening. He says, I need to go dry off, and you should too, and leaves. Luce Theron says, sometimes she frightens me. Rand goes back to the council's head inn and meets up with Lan. Rand says, killing them changes nothing, and I have bigger fish to fry. Can't know everything, Lan says. Did Nynaeve tell you she's hanging out with Cadsuane? Nynaeve, Min, and Olivia come in. Rand asks if they enjoyed riding with Cadsuane. Oh yes, Varen told me. I'm asking her to be my advisor tonight, and hopefully she leaves with us tomorrow. Min says she wants an apology for Kyrian. Think of her as your aunt who won't put up with any nonsense. Nynaeve tells Rand that Cadsuane showed her how to use some of her Turangriel. They're a well that stores Saidar. The innkeeper gives Min a letter for Rand which says, get out of Farmatting. The Dragon Reborn leaves death and destruction wherever he goes, and the men you're looking for are on the top floor above a bookkeeper on Blue Carp Street, just above the Ilian Gate. Cue Admiral Akbar meme. So, on to Chapter 33, Blue Carp Street.
And, of course, Blue Carp Street was the bonus track on...
Right. This one is also a skim. I was thinking it was just the next one that's actually worth... No, this one's a read. There's almost some action in this one. Min points out that the note is very definitely a trap. Rand's rebuff is so. Min throws a knife into the door next to his head, and she can tell he doesn't flinch at all through the bond. Man, if a knife is headed for your noggin, I think a little healthy flinching isn't really a bad idea. What if she sneezed and buried it in your ear instead? But no, it's just Ta'Veren stuff, so it's not gonna happen. It's not an issue. I wonder if Jordan ever just got annoyed and would write a paragraph and Min sneezed and accidentally threw a knife through Rand's temple, and that was the end of it. It would just backspace.
Right.
I know I would.
Yeah.
I want to read some of those Jordan off the cuff paragraphs that he deleted or moved. Yeah,
that would be interesting. Any given famous author, what was the most absurd thing he ever wrote when he was...
and the difference is with Stephen King, he just never hit backspace.
Right, yeah,
he just let the book be about a car that is possessed by a dead dude that also possesses this kid that can drive itself, but it's kind of the dead dude that's driving. Anyway, that's what I read when I was at the beach last week. It's Christine. This was from his cocaine years. Woo, man, it was very good.
I didn't know he had non-cocaine years.
Yeah, he got clean. He talks about that in his memoir. His wife brings a trash bag full of snot and needles and drops it on his desk and is like, you are killing yourself and destroying this family. Get clean. And he does. He got off of everything. He was an alcoholic. And then he got hit by this guy with a van and got addicted to pain pills again. And that's where Dreamcatcher came from. He wrote Dreamcatcher trying to get off pain pills. And man, that book, ooh-wee. Talk about not hitting backspace. But yes, he is now not on cocaine. Swap to Rand, who's buying a meat pie. Jordan, I really think, was hungry when writing a lot of this stuff. And we've been hearing about fish soup and hard cheese and Now a meat pie. Yeah. Rand learns the bootmaker's wife is the one who rents the room, and you can only get to it via a staircase inside the shop. Rand sees Gedwin and Torvald go in. So the game is on. Goes to find Lan and Nynaeve, convinces Nynaeve to use her little well of Saidar to lift him and Lan up to the roof. They get in from the roof via a trapdoor. Oopsie, someone got here first and killed Ted, Gedwin, and Torvald already. It's our favorite lovable psychopath, Padan Fain. Attacks Rand. Yeah, he's back. Attacks Rand while, it's like possessed Where's Waldo or whatever.
Sudden Padan Fain attack!
Yeah. Attacks Rand while Torum Riotlin fights Lan. Fain distracts Rand with an illusion of Gedwin and Torvald and escapes. Guards fill the street outside. Time to go. This reminds me of sneaking games like, Thief the Dark Project or Dishonored or Metal Gear Solid. Like, guards in the streets! It's too late. We got to restart, replay the level. Lan and Rand head back to the roof, but Lan falls off. Rand tries to catch him, but ends up falling too. On to chapter 34, The Hummingbird's Secret.
And it is so funny how, you go from 0 to 100.
Yeah, really.
in these last few chapters.
Yeah, the last 3 chapters especially, for sure.
Yeah, it just, the pace just floors it.
We go from buying meat pies and bribing servers to fighting Padan Fain and falling off a roof. Yeah. And then a lot of other stuff. Swap to Nynaeve on just chapter 34, Hummingbirds. You should definitely read these last three chapters. Who's watching the street filled with guards, so she starts to use her well to distract them. But Catween and Olivia grab her arms. Min tells Nynaeve that Rand is unconscious and hurt. Catween says Nynaeve's channeling has thrown the council into an uproar because they didn't think it was possible to channel in Farmatting thanks to their big Terangriel. Catween says she will keep her promises, but neither Min nor Nynaeve thinks that necessarily means bailing out Rand and Lan. Swap to Rand, who wakes up in a dark cell. His boots and gloves are gone, and Luce Theron is starting to freak out, man, because the cell is a bit like a box. Rand sits on the floor, tries to calm down. He knows they'll probably send for the Tower Aes Sedai to send him back to Elida, so to calm down, he recites the names of women he's failed, including Moraine. As usual, buddy, that doesn't sound very relaxing at all. Catween and company enter the council's chambers unannounced. Elias the First, who we've mentioned before, says they'll have the Dragon Reborn. Says that they have the Dragon Reborn, and Catween offers to take him off her hands. Elias says, no thanks, we'll talk to Tarvalin. Catween says, I have 3 Ashaman with me, which doesn't really faze Elias. So Catween pulls out the big guns. She channels through her well, Terangriel, and lifts the crown from Elias' head. Damer Flynn is kind of doing hand gestures to make it look like it was him. Says, hey, it was me, using Sidene to, I guess, make it more shocking. Catween puts the crown back on Elias' head, and Elias releases Rand into Catween's hands. Well, buddy, you done goofed. Now you owe Catween. All right, on to chapter 35 with the Choden Call.
Wow.
So I know this book doesn't end the slog. We've talked about that. In some ways, the next book is quite sloggy, but if there was ever a chapter that justified reading thousands of pages of skirt straightening and Aes Sedai politicking, this is it. This chapter is the reason I called this book my favorite book in the series for a while after it came out. This is the chapter we've been waiting for 9 books for in a lot of ways. Been building to it. Rand, Catween, Nynaeve et al. Ride out of the Camelin Gate. Min tells Rand, it's over. Don't have time to have to think about that anymore. Rand says he's grateful, voice distant. I found what I needed here. Once they get away from the city, Rand can feel Sidene again, fills himself with it, and sways in the saddle. Luce Theron sighs with relief. Min says, you look ill. Rand says, I'm right as rainwater. Turns to Catween and says, this is the place. The place looks like nothing to everyone but him. He sees a shaft of light like a lantern rising through the ground. Rips the leaves aside with air and pulls out Kalendor. He addresses the group. Going to remove the taint on the male half of the source. Ayo! No, he didn't. Catween says skeptically with that and gestures at Kalendor. With a Choden Call, Rand replies. Rand knows what they're called because Luce Theron knew. You know them as immense statues, Sangreal, one buried in Kyrian and one in Tremalking. Can't be easily moved, but I have a pair of Terangriel called access keys that lets them be used anywhere in the world. Luce Theron moans, dangerous madness. Rand ignores him. Catsuane asks, well, okay, who's going to use the female one? Rand says, Nynaeve will link with me, because he's not going to trust anybody other than the wisdom from Heaven's Field. Kumaira says, young man, if you consider the possibility of failure, you might crack the world like an egg. Lews Therin agrees. They were never tested, never tried. This is insane. You're mad. Mad! Rand replies, 1 in 50 Ashaman has gone mad and must be put down like a rabid dog. Yes, there's a risk, but if I don't do it, and many more will go mad, maybe all of us, what will you do with 500 insane Ashaman wandering around? Catsuane's like, all right, were you going to do it here? Rand says, no, in Shadar Logoth. Fitting place, she says, if we are going to destroy the world. So Rand opens a gateway to a hilltop a few miles north of the Cursed City. Catsuane takes charge, issuing commands. Rand doesn't try to stop her. He's got bigger fish to fry. Eben takes Rand's horse and grins. It would be wonderful to channel without the taint, he says. Always makes me want to empty my belly. Nynaeve walks up complaining about Catsuane and tells Rand to stop smiling. He says we might as well begin. Shouldn't we wait on Catsuane? She'll do what she has to do. We will do what we must, he says. Olivia walks up and tells Nynaeve to hand over all of her Tyr Angriel because she's not going to need them. Nynaeve mutters under her breath but complies, gives her bracelet Angriel, says you better give them back. Olivia says, I'm not a thief. Yeah, let's get past this. Rand and Nynaeve sit down facing each other with the access keys. Robed man and a robed woman. Nynaeve says, put yourself on the edge of embracing the source and we can link. Rand releases Saidin, then reaches for it through the robed man. Reaches, but does not seize it. It hurts like heck. Then Saidin flows through him and into Nynaeve. She draws a breath. How can you stand that? All that chaos and death. She yelps as he snatches control from her. Saidar is way different than he expected. A tranquil river, but the more he struggles, the more he feels like he's going to drown. He stops fighting and the tranquility returns. This is where, it's just kind of cool to see his perspective on Saidar.
Right.
It's not something we've encountered before, certainly not from Rand's perspective. The male and female halves are alike but opposite, fighting each other to drive the wheel of time. The taint has an opposite too, the wound from Ishmael and the wound from Fane's dagger. Rand weaves a conduit of Saidar that touches the male half at one end and Eridhal at the other, a tube of Saidar that isn't tainted so it won't break. Next he draws on Saidin and forces it through the conduit. Pure Saidin except for the taint. Nynaeve encourages him to continue. Rand draws more of both halves until he can't hold anymore. Now we ping-pong from one character to another to get a sense of how epic this deal is. Naturally, this sort of use of the one power is going to attract attention. Catsuane says it'll begin soon. They'll feel that in Tar Valon and on the other side of the world. Everyone get ready. Everyone links up and fans out into the woods, encircling the hilltop in preparation for the inevitable attack. Then we switch to a bumpkin with a cartload of brandy who sees a second sun in the pit outside Kyrian and realizes it must be the one power. With a yelp, he turns his horse around and hightails it back to his farm. He is going to drink all of that plum brandy himself. Sir, that sounds like a truly terrible hangover recipe.
Man, I feel like plum brandy would give you both diarrhea and make you throw up at the same time.
That's a good point. Plums having that effect. Oof, yeah. The worst hangover I ever had was from brandy. 100% terrible idea. Some lady named Timna on Tremalking sees the same thing, but instead of running away to drink plum brandy, she sits down, smiles, and thinks she might see the fulfillment of prophecy and the, quote, end of illusion. Okay, you could say more things about that, but we got to get back to the action. So Sindane feels a channeling and weaves a gateway toward it, steps into the woods, and spins a web to kill Rand as soon as she can catch him. Switch to Catsuane, who sees silver-blue lightning striking at the hilltop, but splashing on a shield she wove. Jahar holds Kalendor, and Maurice is linked with him, using the power to make a fountain of flame erupt in the forest to the north, where the lightning likely originated. Catsuane looks at Rand, who sits like a stone, sweat rolling down his face. Nynaeve is groaning with the ecstasy of so much Saidar. Neither seems aware of what's going on around them. Back to Rand. He can't feel anything. He swims in seas of flame, dodges collapsing mountains of ice. He thinks if he lost control for an instant, the taint would sweep him away. It seems no less, despite how much it flows through that odd flower. He has to hold on, but for how long? Demandrad steps through a gateway into Shadar Logoth. Pretty clear what the kid is trying to do, and stopping him might kill him, so definitely wants to do that. He runs toward Rand, but an old man throws a web of Saidin and forces him to retreat and defend himself. Sindane wants to kill him too, and is getting closer. So it turns out Dashiva was Asingar all along. Who knew? He made Trollocs Mirjal back in the Age of Legends, creeps toward where Rand is, thinking Moradin was crazy before he was sealed in the boar. I don't know why he's thinking that, but that's what he's thinking. Varen sees a woman wearing a gown of shifting colors and jewels. She tries to shield her, but realizes the woman is holding Saidar and is real strong. So she's fighting for her life. Eben is tricked by a Forsaken, realizes it too late, throws himself at her as he warns his circle. Feels Daigen drawing on the power, and yeah, we can figure it's kind of like he dived on a grenade. That's pretty clear. Sindane faces off with a wit woman decked in gems. She's like, "Get out of my way, you scrub." But then realizes that this lady is stronger than Sindane was before the snakes and foxes had her. Impossible. Moghedien switched to Moghedien, who doesn't want to be here, but Moradin compelled her to with the Kur Suvra. So she pulls a Moghedien and hides. Switch to Rand, who is screaming in his head. Gosh, I hate days like that. The taint is moving, and that's all that matters. Gotta hang on. Man, it sounds like he's sitting on the toilet or something.
Right.
Catsuane asks Min what's going on with Rand. She says he's alive and hurting. Let me go to him. Catsuane says, you would just get in the way. So she walks over to Rand and Nynaeve. The black dome over Shadar Logoth is swelling. Looks like black steel. Light dims around it. Nynaeve falls over, muttering, I can't do it anymore, so Catsuane heals her a little bit, even though she's not very good at it. Asingar sees Rand and Jahar with Kalendor. He laughs and weaves balefire. Elza recognizes Dashiva, draws on Kalendor, and covers the hill he's on in fire. And that's all she wrote for Asingar. Always nice when someone other than Rand kills a Forsaken.
Yep.
Switch to Moghedien, who sees the dome rising 2 miles into the sky. It could grow and envelop the whole world. Something rides under the surface like a flame if flames were blacker than black. As I wrote. Then another and another until the whole dome looks like it's on fire. A roar of 10,000 thunders makes her clap her hands to her ears and shriek as the domes collapse in on itself. The wind howls toward where the dome had been, pulling her toward it. Somehow she feels no fear, thinking if she survives this, she can survive anything. Catsuane lets the remains of the excess key drop to the ground. It is melted like wax. Nynaeve and Rand have passed out but are okay. Daigen rocks Eben's corpse in her arms. Jahar says softly, it's clean. Catsuane wonders how they could be sure. Could a scrap of the taint remain? She says, I want to leave as soon as the rest of the warders return. She has questions for Rand and does not intend to lose him. So I wanted to read the last paragraph, because that's always cool to do.
It. Yeah, you gotta.
Night fell. On the hilltop, the wind blew dust across the fragments of what had been a Terangriel. Below lay the tomb of Shadar Logoth, open to give the world hope. And on distant Tremalking, the word began to spread that the time of illusions was at an end. The end of the 9th book of the Wheel of Time. Good stuff. Good stuff
indeed. Well, thanks for joining us on this journey that is Winter's Heart. I think next week we're going to do an off-topic episode, but then after that, we'll be jumping into Crossroads of Twilight. I got to say, when we get to this point in the book, you're right. This is so epic. It's so much fun. And I used to be like optimistic about the show.
Right.
And I would like picture it, it could be like this and like this.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm just like, I don't even know if we're going to make it this far, man.
I don't either. Yeah. I almost want in a way, I want us to jump to this, but in another way, it's like you really need to build up to some degree for this to really be as meaningful in the show. It could be as meaningful in the show as in the books. I mean, you couldn't do this in season 2 just without question. Like setting the books aside, it just wouldn't. Like, there's a million reasons why, but like you need the build up of just how terrible the taint is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just this fight with all these different channelers protecting Rand and Nynaeve and, the different Terangrial in use. And I could see just like a lot of really cool camera work of like, like flying around as the different channelers are facing off with the
dome rising up and the fire blasting a hill and balefire and Olivia facing off with Sindane. Like some cool back and forth like cross-cut shots.
Yeah, exactly. While we remain hopeful.
Right. We're not holding our breath.
Yeah. Anyway, we will see you next week. You can always reach out to us at stuff@tsmpodcast.com, or just visit tsmpodcast.com, fill out our contact form. If you have helpful feedback or other things you want to say, or, a recipe for waffles
Right.
or whatever, then we'll give you a shout out next time that we're able to. And thanks for listening. Until next time, Tai'Shar Manethrin.